Good morning, students. I welcome you to the second year mechanical engineering branch. So, till yesterday, you are in the first year learning about mathematics, physics, chemistry, etc. Now, you have entered into the second year mechanical. In the second year mechanical, along with other courses, you will learn about the material science and technology. So, what is material science? Why should you learn it? First, let me explain these two concepts. So, material science deals with the various materials used in the daily life. Say, for example, suppose if you see this motorcycle. So, motorcycle parts you know very well. It has tires, seat, handle, etc. But as an engineer, you should know what are the materials used for various parts. For example, if you take handle, mostly it is a mild steel. Similarly, the petrol tank is also made up of mild steel. Suppose if you take this tire, it is made up of specially made rubber. Similarly, if you take these mud guards, they are composites. And if you take the engine made up of the cast iron. And of course, you have a plug inside, that plug is made up of a ceramic material. So, that means a small device, a motorcycle is consisting of not less than 10 types of materials. If you imagine a big industry, a petroleum refining or cement industry or a steel industry where the huge machinery are there. So, large number of materials are used to fabricate such heavy industry. So, as a mechanical engineering student, it is very essential for you to understand about the materials, so that you can produce a new material which be very useful for the different purposes. So, in this we will try to understand various types of materials and how we can prepare a new materials. So, basically this whole subject consists of 5 units. Unit 1 we will try to understand the structure of the materials, because if you want to produce a new material, the basic knowledge of lattice structures is very essential. Otherwise, you cannot produce a new material which has uniformity and which has required property. So, the lattice structure understanding is very essential. So, in this unit, we will discuss about lattice structure and the various lattice parameters, and also we discuss about the various defects present in the crystal systems or solids. So, we also discover in this unit. Further, we will discuss about the when you want to mix 2 or 3 metals to get an alloy, what are the properties required. So, in the unit 1, we discuss about the bonding, we discuss about the lattice structures, we discuss about the defects present in the solids, as well as the concept of producing new alloys. Similarly, if we take unit 2, it is nothing but the phase equilibria or equilibrium diagrams. In this, suppose say you want to produce a steel and you are mixing carbon in iron. So, it is not so easy. Suppose you take a molten material consisting of steel and carbon, when you cool it, you cannot expect as it is whole melt will form a solid at a room temperature. At different temperatures, different phases are formed. So, when you want to produce a new material by mixing 2 or more elements, how they behave in the molten state, when you cool them, how they separate. That we will understand in the phase equilibrium. So, here we discuss about the phase diagrams of various materials, and when the two elements are mixed, when they are cold, there are different reactions occur. Of course, all these reactions are not chemical reactions, they are physical reactions. That is why this is called as physical equilibrium or phase equilibrium. And all this unit is governed by a rule called phase rule. So, we will start with phase rule, we will discuss about various invariant reactions, we will try to understand about the phase diagrams of various compounds or alloys, whatever you call it. So, that is about the unit 2. When you come to unit 3, the very important material, maximum used material in the industry and the society, they are nothing but cast irons and steels. And when I was showing, suppose if you take this, so this engine block is made up of cast iron. So, what is cast iron? How it is different from pure iron? How it is different from steel? We will understand in this unit. So, we will discuss about the cast irons, how we can produce the cast irons, what are their properties and what are their applications, we will understand in this unit. And also another important material in the society, the used is steel. You are seeing the various construction industries, construction companies, and whereas bridges are constructed, houses are constructed, and different what you call machineries are produced, and most of these are produced by using steel. So, I can say that steel is the maximum utilized material in the whole world. If you take in the form of tonnage, if we take, the maximum tonnage used material in the world is steel. So, there are various types of steels. They are steel itself an alloy, but you can change the properties of steel by adding some other elements. They are called as alloy steels. So, we will understand normal steels, they are called as mild steels. We will also understand about the alloy steels and their properties in this unit. So, when you come to fourth unit, heat treatment we call it. That means, say suppose if you want to change the density or strength or hardness of a material, we can change by changing the composition. That is a normal practice, but without changing the composition, we can also change the mechanical properties of the materials, that is by heat treatment. So, heat treatment is a technique by which we can change the mechanical properties of the materials. Of course, heat treatment is very much used only for the steels. That means, the property of a steel, without changing the composition, we can change. The property means hardness, strength, flexibility, etc., that can be changed by giving a suitable heat treatment. So, in this unit, we will understand what is the heat treatment, how heat treatment is carried, what is the effect of heat treatment on the properties of steels, we will understand in this unit. Next, last unit is another very important materials, they are non-ferrous metals and their alloys. Non-ferrous metals commonly used are copper, aluminum, zinc, etc. So, we will understand about the copper, we will understand about the aluminum, we understand about the zinc and their alloys. Say for example, if we take, so a what you call aluminum alloys, we are using the partition frames, we use the aluminum alloys. In various houses, we want to make a partition, we use the aluminum channels, but it is not a pure aluminum. It is an alloy of the aluminum. So, in the unit 5, we try to understand non-ferrous metals like copper, zinc, aluminum and their alloys. So, this is about the course content. So, in the first unit, we discuss the structure, defects, etc. The second unit, we discuss about the phase equilibrium, phase diagrams. In the third unit, we discuss about the cast irons and steels. And the fourth unit, we discuss about the heat treatment. And finally, in the fifth unit, we discuss about the non-ferrous materials. So, this is the content of all total our course. So, this is what we have to understand, because the now question is, why should we study this? So far we try to understand what is material science. The next question is, why should we study this? Because as I stated earlier, the total fabrication industry, any industry if you take, or automobiles you take it, so daily life large number of materials we use. Unless until we understand their characters, their properties, their structure, effect of these properties, let us say thermal conductivity, mechanical strength, electrical conductivity, all these properties we want to change, we should understand the materials. So, this course is introduced at secondary level to make you to understand the properties of materials, so that at later stage when you become an engineer, you can conveniently produce new materials required for various industries. So, that is the purpose of going through this course, or I can say objective of this course, right. Now, so suppose if we take, what are the common materials we use in the daily life? Say we use metals, we use alloys, we use ceramics, we use plastics, and we also use the composites. So, these are the 5 common materials we use for any purpose. It may be mechanical industry, it may be chemical industry, it may be automobile industry, it may be electronics industry, what not. You take any industry, either combination of this or exclusively one material, we use it. Of course, there are other materials called semiconductors. A semiconductor is another very important material which is commonly used in the electronic industry. That is not included here, because these are the materials which are used in the large quantities. That is why I have mentioned about 5, and the 6th one is semiconducting materials. So, suppose if we take, say this is copper, either in the pure form or in alloy form we use it. This is the gold. Mostly gold is used for ornaments and other purposes, but normally it is also used in the alloy form. Suppose you take a ceramic. So, what is a ceramic? Ceramic is a material which is produced from various clays. The ceramic word means non-conducting material, a clay material. So, let us say tea and cups, what we are using in the household purpose, they are ceramics. Glasses we use it, they are ceramics. And another is important material is the steel. So, steel is, as I told, the maximum used material in the society. So, these are the common materials. Just to make you to understand, I am showing these figures: copper wire, gold blocks, pottery or ceramic material, and steels. Say another materials. Suppose I told composite. The composite is nothing but a material produced by combination of 2 or more components to get an useful property. Say for example, you take sand and chips and cement. When they are independent, we cannot use them. When you mix them, I am repeating, sand, cement and chips. When you mix them, you get a concrete. So, concrete is a composite. So, if you want to improve the tensile strength of the concrete, we use the steel reinforcement, RCC, reinforced cement concrete. That is also a composite material. For example, this. So, this block is RCC block, reinforced cement concrete block. So, it is a best example for a composite. Of course, composite is different from compound. In the compound, we cannot identify individual components. For example, you take water. It is a compound of hydrogen and oxygen. In the water, we cannot identify hydrogen or oxygen. That is called composite. Whereas in a that is called compound, sorry. And in a composite, individual components do not lose their identity. That means, steel remains as a steel, chips remain as chips, cement remain as a cement, but we get a very useful property, very hard, strong structure. That is called a composite. Okay? Similarly, composites, natural composites also there. For example, if we take our teeth are natural composites. Wood is a natural composite, but this is a man-made composite. Okay? Similarly, suppose you take polymers, the another very important material we use in the daily life. Say polymer means, let us say polyethylene, polybutane, PVC, they are the polymers. But friends, please try to understand, we never use pure polymers for any product. We prepare polymers by adding some other materials. That is what indirectly we call it compounding of polymers. By compounding of polymers, we get a material that is called plastic. So, plastic is a combination of a polymer and some other material. So, that is called the plastic. So, that is called synthetic plastic. So, plastic contains both polymer and some other material. Whereas, if you take a natural polymer, cotton is a natural polymer made up of polycellulose. It is a pure polymer. Whereas, this is a blended polymer. Polymer plus some other thing, that is called a blended polymer. So, these are the composites, natural, synthetic, polymers, natural and synthetic. Now, so this is about the introduction of our subject. What are the various units present, what we are discussing in that units, and briefly about the various materials we use in the daily life. Next, the one of the concept in the material science is bonding. Of course, we have understood the bonding at +2 level as well as in the first year course, right? Okay. So far I was trying to explain you the introduction of material science. Now, we will move into the first concept in the material science, that is the bonding. So, you know very well, if you see the bonding means different materials are produced by different bonding. Say for example, if you take sodium chloride, it is produced by electrostatic attraction between a sodium ion and chloride ion. Suppose if you take a diamond, the diamond consists of carbon atoms. The carbon atoms are bonded together with the help of a covalent bond. And if we take copper, in the copper atoms are bonded together by a special bond that is called a metallic bond. So, if we see the bonding based on their strength, based on the concept called bond energy, bonded are classified into two types, primary bonds and secondary bonds. I am repeating, the classification of bonds is based on bond energy and of course strength. More the bond energy, stronger is the bond. So, two types of bonds are there, primary and secondary. Primary bonds means very strong, high bond energies. Secondary bonds means weak and low bond energies. The another thing is, most of the primary bonds or all primary bonds are interatomic forces. That means the attraction is between atoms or ions. That is called a primary bond. Whereas secondary bond, mostly they are intermolecular forces which are weak. Say for example, we take ice crystal. In the ice crystal, water molecules are bound together with the hydrogen bond, which is very weak. That is why the melting point of ice is low. Whereas take primary bonds, they are very strong. Say for example, if you want to melt sodium chloride, we have to heat more than 1000 degrees temperature. If you want to heat the diamond, if you want to melt the diamond, impossible, almost more than 3000 degrees temperature. That is the character of a primary bond. And I am repeating, primary bonds are strong bonds having high bond energies, and mostly they are interatomic forces. Whereas secondary bonds are weak, low bond energies, and they are intermolecular forces. Of course, I cannot discuss in detail about ionic and covalent bond. I hope that you understood about them at initial levels, maybe at a school level or +2 level or in the first year level. So, straight away for us as a mechanical engineers, we always deal with metals and alloys. Hence, it is very essential to understand the type of forces present among the metal atoms. So, that is nothing but a metallic bond. Friends, metallic bond is comparatively new. New means not invented last year, before last year. When you see ionic and covalent bond, they are much earlier invented. So, metallic bond concept later, because what type of forces are there in the metals? Whether they are ionic in nature, whether they are covalent in nature, there was a confusion. But finally, the scientists have identified a special attractive force prevails in the metals, that they named it as metallic bond. So, in this concept, first we will understand what is the nature of metallic bond, what is the metallic radius, what are the factors affecting the strength of metallic bond, and metallic crystals, finally alloys. So, nature of metallic bond. Say for example, if you take I have shown earlier gold or copper, I have shown it. Copper contains copper atoms, gold contains gold atoms. So, they are similar atoms. So, these similar atoms, they are forming bond. Suppose if we assume that like in the diamond, where carbon atoms are attached with the help of covalent bond, if I think that similar bond, can it present in the gold or copper? No, because to form a covalent bond, every atom should contribute 1 electron each. Then only a covalent bond can form. Whereas, if you see the metallic structures, in the metallic structures, suppose if we take iron, in the iron lattice is able to link with 8 iron atoms. Suppose if you take a copper crystal, every copper atom is linked with 12 copper atoms, but their valence electrons are very 2 or 3 only. With 2 or 3 valence electrons, how they are able to form so many bonds? So, that means the bonding force which is there in the metals is not of covalent in nature. It is something different. That something different is a metallic bond. So, now if you take, so metallic bond can be explained with the help of a model called electron C model. I am repeating, a metallic bond can be explained with the help of a model called electron C model. So, what is electron C model? You will understand now. Suppose you take a metal. Metal is a combination of large number of atoms. So, as I told you, metal structures, atoms are very closely arranged. So, we call them as close packed structures. Metals are having close packed structures. That means, each atom is surrounded by large number of atoms. Suppose copper is surrounded by 12 copper atoms, iron it is surrounded by 8 atoms. So, very close. Because of the closeness, what happens? The valence electron of each atom is influenced by surrounding atoms. Because of that influence, the electron leaves the parent atom. Say for example, if we see here, this electron has come out of this atom. This electron has come out of this atom. Why? Because of the influence of the surrounding atoms. So, that means all atoms in the metal lattice lose their valence electrons due to influence of surrounding atoms. So, that means the atom became a positive ion because it has lost its electron. So, in a metal lattice or in the metal structure is a combination of metal ions and the electrons which came out from the metal atoms. So, that means if you see this is as a whole a metal. So, here this whole white is called electron C. There are full of break this one. Okay. So, there are full of electrons. So, that means if we take a metal, although it appears like a solid, but inside this there are free electrons. Why we are calling it as sea of electrons? These free electrons continuously move from one corner to other corner, like water in the ocean. That is why we call it sea of electrons. And inside that sea of electrons, we have positive ions. That means every metal consists of freely moving electron cloud or sea of electrons and stable metal ions. And that is why we call it metal consists of core of positive ions and electron cloud which is freely moving, right. Now, if we see, so valence do not belong to a specific atom. That is what I told. They come out of the atoms. That is what we call them as not localized, or they are called delocalized electrons. So, this means this electron is not within this atom. This electron is not within this atom. If it is within the atom, we call it localized. When it comes out of the atom, we call it delocalized. So, these delocalized electrons form sea of the electron or cloud of the electrons. Okay? Now, if we see, so now if we see the charge of these two, one is sea of electrons or cloud of electrons, other is the positive ion core. So, we have two types of charges. Freely moving electron cloud is negatively charged and positive ion core. So, every metal consists of positive ion core and negatively charged electron cloud. So, these are two opposite charges, you know very well. When two opposite charges are closely held together, there is electrostatic force of attraction. So, the metallic bond is defined as electrostatic force of attraction between freely moving electron cloud and core of positive ions. I am repeating, the metallic bond is defined as electrostatic force of attraction between freely moving electron cloud and core of positive ions. So, that means it has ionic nature. It has ionic nature because electrostatic forces are involved. It has a covalent nature also, because in the covalent bond we know that every participating atom contributes one or more electrons. So, here also every participating atom is contributing one or more electrons. So, metallic bond has ionic nature because of electrostatic forces. It has a covalent nature because every atom is contributing one or more electrons. So, that is about the metallic bond. Okay. Now, if you see the if you remember nature of ionic bond and covalent bond, we say that ionic bond is a non-directional bond, whereas covalent bond is a directional bond. What the meaning of that? If you have a ionic bond, suppose if you have a positive ion, this positive ion can attract electrons, negatively charged electrons from all corners, from any direction. That is the nature of electrostatic forces. Whereas covalent bond, it is a overlapping of the orbitals. So, always in one direction. So, metallic bond is formed by electrostatic forces of attraction. That is why, so metallic bond is non-directional in nature. It is not a directional bond because electrostatic forces are involved. So, that is about the nature of metallic bond. I am briefing. So, metallic bond is a bond which is prevailing in the metals. So, it is formed by delocalization of electrons, and once electrons are delocalized, they move freely from one corner to other corner and exert electrostatic force of attraction on positive ions. So, metallic bond is defined as electrostatic force of attraction between freely moving electron cloud and core of positive ions. Since electrostatic forces are involved, this bond is a non-directional bond. Okay. Next, we will see now. It is fairly strong. Electrostatic forces which are existing in the metals, they are fairly strong. That is why normally metals are having high boiling point, of course, except S block metals, sodium, potassium, rubidium, cesium, they have low boiling points, but most of the D block metals, say let us say iron, copper, gold, silver, lead, all of them have high melting points. And suppose if you take that, okay. So, but if when you see that, if you compare the bond strength, ionic, covalent and metallic, metallic bond strength is comparatively weaker than the bond strength of covalent and ionic. So, there is another feature of metallic bond. I am repeating, metallic bond is comparatively weaker than covalent and ionic bond among three primary bonds. So, three primary bonds are ionic, covalent and metallic. Among these three, metallic bond is comparatively weaker. Now, how this metallic bond affects the properties of the metals. Suppose if it is the factors affecting strength of metallic bond, okay, the strength of metallic bond can be estimated. One is the melting point of the metal, boiling point of the metal, enthalpy of change, that is a fusion, and enthalpy of vaporization. So, if you see that by means although all the metals have metallic bond, but there is a difference in the strength. As I told in the beginning, S block metals have low melting and boiling points, whereas P block metals have high melting and boiling points. So, that we will discuss that. Okay. Say, suppose if we take S block metals, the size of atom is small, okay, and whereas if you take aluminum, these things are, but do not think that aluminum atoms. So, the size of the atom and number of electrons present decides the melting and boiling point. Of course, a small amount of covalent nature in the P block metals, that is why they have abnormal boiling point and melting points. Okay. But if you see as a pure metal, in the S block metals, metallic character is more than P block metal. I am repeating, S block metals are having more metallic character than P block metals, because in the P block metals there is some covalent nature, whereas in S block metals they are pure metallic in nature. That is why they have low melting and boiling points. Okay. Next, if we see, suppose if we take the electron valence metallic bond, suppose if we take number of valence electrons sodium only 1, its melting point is 98. Whereas if we take aluminum, number of valence electron 3, so its melting point is 660. That means in aluminum, more number of free electrons than in the sodium lattice. So, that is why electrostatic forces are weak here comparatively aluminum. That is why aluminum has more boiling point or melting point. Okay. Now, similarly, if you see the density, density also depends on how many atoms are there in a unit volume. I am repeating, the density of metals depends on the number of atoms in a unit volume. Suppose if you take alkali metals, sodium, potassium, etc., their densities are low because their bond is weak, so less number of atoms in the unit volume. But if you take the P block metals, so P block metals have more close packed structure. That means in a unit volume, more number of atoms are there in the P block metals. So, these close packed structures are known as, there are different close packed structures in the crystallography. One is the base body center cube, face center cube, and hexagonal close packed structures. So, most of the, not most, all P block metals have one of these lattices. So, the character of these lattices is close packed nature. What is the meaning of close packed nature? The number of atoms per unit volume is more. That means atoms are very closely arranged. That is why the densities are high, right. Similarly, so if you see the atomic radius also, it is higher in the things. So, size if we see, sodium atom is smaller than magnesium atom is smaller than aluminum atom, right. Now, similarly, if you see the high melting and boiling points, I told all that. So, the boiling point and melting point of metals depends on the strength of electrostatic forces and close packed structure. So, extensive delocalization of electrons. So, the more delocalized electrons in the lattice, higher is the melting point. That's why aluminum has high melting point than sodium. So, bond strength already explained it. Ionic bond is equal to metallic bond, but as a covalent bond and so on. And other properties are high flexibility. Why metals are highly flexible? You know that metals are ductile, metals are malleable. Whereas if you take this a plastic material, or if I take a diamond, or if I take a concrete, they are not flexible. They are very hard. If you try to bend them, they break. Whereas metals, they do not break. When you bend them, they bend. When you use the force, they bend, or they elongate, or they extend. So that means metals are having high flexibility. So that flexibility, we can explain the two forms. One is the malleability, that is ability to deform under compression. The second is the ductility, the ability to deform under tension. Only metals have these two properties. One is the malleability, other is the ductility. Not ionic, not covalent. Why it is so? It is again due to the electrostatic forces. See, if we go back the structure, in the metal lattice, one side we have electron cloud, other side you have metal ion core. So, metal ion core is very high density, electron core is a very low denser. Suppose if you a tug of war if you have between a small boy and a big file one, what is that? Is there any war between them? Similarly, electron cloud is low denser and positive ion core is high denser. So, because of the low density of this electron cloud, the forces are not very strong. That is why when you apply the compression or tension, there is a delocalization of the atoms or positive ions, that is there only in the metals. That is what we call it, metals are flexible. So, simply metals are flexible due to weakness in the electrostatic forces exerted by electron cloud. And if we see the, so the another thing is they are layered structure. So, positive ion layer, another positive ion layer and another positive ion layer. Between these layers we have low density electron cloud. That is why when you apply the force, these layers can easily slide one layer on the other layer. Why it is so? Because of the low density of electrons between these two layers. That is why layers can slide one on another when the forces are applied. That is why they are malleable and ductile. And high thermal and electrical conductivity. You know that all metals are excellent thermal conductors, excellent electrical conductors. Suppose you take copper, silver, any metal you take it. Of course, there is a change, but normally metals are good conductors. It is again because of the, if we see this, due to free movement of electrons. So, electrons are very free. So, when you apply the external current, these electrons carry the current because they are easily moving, they are freely moving. So, the free moving electrons carry the charge. That is why metals are having good thermal or electrical conductivity. They carry the charge, they carry the heat because they are freely moving. Because of that free movement, they are able to carry the charge as well as heat. That is why metals having good thermal conductivity and electrical conductivity. It is because of free moving electron gas, free moving electron cloud, which can carry the heat or charge. Okay. And finally, you know that metal surfaces, when you polish a metal surface, put in front of the sun, we will see the very brightness. That is what we call it lustre. I am repeating, when you polish any metal surface, put in front of sun, we will see the brightness. That brightness is called as lustre. So, metals are glazing and they are lustre. The lustre is due to, again if you see that, so I told that there are electrons are there. These electrons which are free, they can move from one means valence band to conduction band, and they move easily from one band to other band. When heat is supplied or when the sun falls on the electrons, they get the energy from sunlight and they move to higher levels. Again, immediately they fall back. When they are falling back, they release the energy. That energy we are seeing as the brightness. So again, the lustrous nature of metals is again due to presence of free electrons which are able to absorb the energy from the sunlight and able to go to higher levels. Since higher levels they are unstable, immediately they fall back. While they are falling back, they release the energy. That energy we are seeing in the form of light. So that's why metals are having lustrous nature. So finally I conclude, the properties of metals I am trying to correlate with the metallic bond. First we have seen that why metals are strong, because metallic bond is a primary bond. So they have high melting points except S block metals, and metals are having high thermal and electrical conductivity because there are free electrons in the structure, and metals are malleable and ductile because the layers of positive ions can move easily due to presence of low electron density. So that is why they are malleable and ductile. They are lustrous, means they glaze in the sunlight because of delocalized electrons which absorb the energy, go to higher level and fall back. While falling back, they release the energy. So these are the properties of the metals, and which can be understand with the help of the metallic bond concept. Is it clear? So right. Welcome back. So far I was discussing about what is the metallic bond, what is its nature, what are the various properties of metals, how we can correlate the properties of metals with the metallic bond concept. Now we will see the metallic crystals. Say you know that a large number of metals are their alloys we are using in the daily life. Okay. So we have to understand about the crystal structures. So suppose if, as I told earlier, most of the metals, especially D block metals, they are having closed packed structure. Closed packed structure means the number of atoms per unit volume is very high. So that's what we call it a closed packed structures. So if you see the metals, so they have closed packed structures, and most of them are similar atoms are there. So in this, so we see there are three types of closed packed structures. One is hexagonal closed packed structure, SCP. Second one is face center cubic structure, FCC. Third one is the body center cubic structure. So if you see the metals, almost all the metals, they have one of these lattices. Suppose if you take very commonly used metal is copper. Copper is having FCC lattice. If you see the iron has BCC lattice. Suppose if you take zinc has SCP lattice. So metals are having closed packed structures, either BCC or FCC or HCP, right? So that is about the closed packed structures of the metals. So friends, in this topic I covered about what is the necessary of studying the material science, what are its objectives, and the first concept, that is the metallic bond and closed packed structures. So closed packed structure means the number of atoms per unit volume is high, and they are nothing but closed packed structures. They are called FCC, BCC and HCP. So thank you very much, and we will continue this the next level we discuss about the imperfections in the solids, right. Thank you very much till that.